Hi there, welcome to Posca Club. In today's video I'm going to show you how to draw rainbows kind of bursting out of a couple of skulls' heads. I'm also going to show you one of my favourite things about Posca pens, which is the ability to be able to put colours over the top of other colours. So let me show you what colours we're going to need for today's session. You're going to need essentially all the rainbow colours. It doesn't matter too much if you don't have exactly the same colours as this. Any kind of colours would do, but it does look really effective with these rainbow colours. So for those of you that want to get the exact colours, we've got red, orange and yellow there at the top. I know that's obvious that they're red, orange and yellow, but I'm reading out the actual name of the colour as well, because down here, rather than green, where you're going to use light green, it's a slightly paler version of the green, which is quite a nice contrast, nice jump from yellow into the greens. Also going to go with light blue rather than regular blue, which is way too dark for what we're going to do here. And then I'm going into lilac. It's probably not one of the colours that we use that much. Normally I'd go for like a violet colour, but lilac's a nice, again, a nice bridge between the that joins up with this light blue. Finally, for the skull, we're going to use deep grey and black for the skull. All of these pens are in 5M, so quite fat pens, but I like drawing thin lines with fat pens, so all of them in fat 5M pens. What you'll also need though is a couple of smaller Poscas for the black. So I always like to have a 3M and a 1M in black handy as well, because we'll do quite a bit of outline and guidelines with this 3M, okay? Right then, let's do it. Let's not waste any time. Let's get straight on with it. So what we're going to do, first thing we're going to do is going to take our black 3M. Black 3M, we're going to do the most basic skulls that you've ever seen. Nothing complicated about these skulls. We're going to do two together, so make sure they're not too wide. You can do either two next to each other just here. You can do one down here, one at the top. If you go up the top, just make sure you leave yourself enough space for the rainbow that's going to be curling over the top as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one skull. I've got like a little smudge on my sketchbook, so I'm going to put one skull down here to cover over that mess that we've got. So start off with a curve like that. That's going to be the opening of the head of the skull. Okay, that's where the rainbow is going to burst out from. So start off with that. Then what we'll do is we'll go down, do some cheekbones, 3 little bounces for teeth, and then back to the other cheekbone. So down like that, either side. Just hook it around, 3 teeth, like that, and then circles, or more like squircles, I guess. Nothing too neat, nothing too accurate. There you go, there's one skull. Really important, that line there, that curve down is really important to show that our skull is leaning forward a bit. And we're going to put the back of the skull in later, so it will look a lot more 3D when we've finished it. Let's do another one of those over here. So same kind of thing, so big curve first. Hook it round, 3 bounces underneath, and then a couple of eyes. You can see I'm not bothered about doing it too accurately. Wonky is good, so go with that if you want. Okay, let's go and colour those in. So once you've got that, let's get rid of that little smudge that I've got on my book. That's what I like about these Posca pens. They do just go over everything. You can't see anything underneath anymore. So any kind of bits of cardboard or paper that you're using, you think I can't use that because it's already got something on it, you definitely can with Posca. You can just go straight over the top of it. So obviously you might have spotted that I've switched to my 5M to colour in. It's a slightly fatter pen, just gets the job done a little bit quicker. Most of my colouring in is done with 5Ms. Most of the colours that I've got are 5Ms. Posca do loads of different sizes, loads of different colours. But my advice has always been just grab as many colours as you can in the 5M size. And then with black and white, that's when you want to grab all the different sizes. And when I say all the different sizes, I mean like 3Ms and 1Ms. And the reason for that is mainly because I put a lot more detail in with the black outlines. With the colours, all I'm doing is just chucking big bits of colour on. And there is nice ways, we won't get a chance to do it today, but there's nice ways of cutting in with the bigger colours or the fatter colours to make them turn them into thinner lines. So you don't need a thin pen. You just need to know how to turn a fat line into a thin line using Posca pens. But that's not in today's class, that's in another class. For the time being, all we're going to concentrate on is this really simple picture of a rainbow. Use that Posca paint to cover over the top of some of the other colours. Show you how easy that is. Here we go, nearly finished with our first skull. Of course, just pause the video if you're not keeping up with the colouring in. Awesome. Easy, yeah? Then what we're going to do is we're going to start working through our colours. We'll come back to the grey later. The grey is going to be the rim of the skull. That's going to really, when we put that grey on, you'll really notice how why we've done those curves down the bottom and how it looks a lot more 3D with that. But what we're going to do is start with the lilac. I think it's better to start on the inside and work our way outside with this. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line, 2 lines in fact, from there to there, and then we're going to colour those in. Now we're not going to go, we've got, how many colours we've got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you just got to think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3 should get us to about the centre of the skull. So just think about how thick you want it. Now when we start this line, we need at least a finger width gap from the edge of the skull into where we start this line. So let's go from about, I reckon about there to there. Now it doesn't matter, we don't have to touch the black part of the skull, we can leave it, we can cut it a bit short if we want. There's our first stripe. Like I say, it doesn't have to touch the bottom of the skull or the opening of the skull there, because we are going to put some grey over the top of that and tidy that line up later. Just get quite close to it if you can, but don't get hung up about getting it perfect. There's a neat way of using this deep grey that we've got to do that bit for us, to tidy it all up. Okay, let's work on our next colour. Now the main thing is just make sure these bits are dry, the bits that we're going to go next to. Make sure they're dry enough before you go and put this next colour in. You don't want too much bleeding in there. You can blend these pens, and it is another technique that we talk about in the Korp Academy. I've done a few lessons on how to blend these pens. But for this one, we're not going to do any blending. What we're going to do is just go quite close, touch the line. Just there. All the way around to the other side. Then you see how thick the lilac line is. We're going to go for that same kind of thickness for the light blue line. Also remembering that by the time we get to the third colour, the third colour wants to be at the middle of the skull. So right in between the eyes is where the third colour will stop. And that third colour is that light green, which we're coming up to next. In the meantime, let's just whack in a little bit of light blue here. Like that. Again, don't worry about getting right close up to the skull. We don't have to get bang on it. We can leave a little gap. That is fine. Okay, a couple of things whilst you are colouring in. Just always make sure you have a little bit of scrap paper so that you can always prime your pen. Priming it is where you're just pushing the nib into the barrel like that, just to get some fresh paint out. You want to be doing that on a scrap piece of card rather than on your actual artwork, because one day it will just spill loads of paint on your artwork, so we don't want that to happen. So yeah, have that scrap bit of cardboard handy. There you go, there's our first line. And remember that I said when we get to our third colour, it needs to go right in the middle of the skull, so I reckon we're about on track there. That looks pretty accurate. Getting into the middle part of the skull. Might have to go a little bit thinner with the next lines, but we'll see. We can either go thinner with the next lines or we can extend the skull a little bit. You know, that's the beauty of Posca pens. You can tweak things and change things on the fly really easily. You don't have to get things right first time. There we go, so let's whack some light green in there. Next colour in the spectrum is that yellow. So go and grab that yellow. Then give it a prime. Yellow's a particularly tricky colour. You'll need to prime it lots, make sure you shake it lots, scribble lots to pull all the fresh paint through the from the barrel into the nib. And let's go and put this yellow stripe on. So I'm going to go a little bit thinner with my stripes now, just to make sure that I can definitely fit them all in. See a little tiny bit of white showing through there, so let's just get as close as we can. The edge of that green should be dry, so you shouldn't get too much. If you do get a little bit of green on your nib, just give it a clean by scribbling on a bit of card. Okay, slightly thinner with my lines this time, just so I can definitely squeeze on all the colours. So I've got another 2 colours to squeeze in there. Now, one thing to remember as well when you're colouring in with Posca pens is you don't need to press too hard. Don't press hard on them. You just want to tickle the page. If you press hard, you tend to get like a streaky finish. So nice and gentle. Okay, nearly there. One more colour. So just well, 2 more colours. Just remember, as you're doing this, be careful. Bits are still wet. The Posca paint doesn't dry instantly. It usually takes a few seconds. So just be careful where you're putting your hand. You don't want any smudges in there. If you do get any smudges, nothing to panic about. It's very easy to fix any mistakes that we make with Posca pens. Main thing is, if you do make a mistake, let it dry and then fix it when you're ready. When you're ready, not don't be pressured into fixing it quick because the mistake is kind of sitting there on your paper. Let it dry, fix it when it's dry. Now, one thing a lot of people ask me is what paper I use. You'll notice I'm using a sketchbook and I'm getting no pilling from using Posca pens in a sketchbook. Regular sketchbooks, you'll get pilling, which is where the fibres of the paper get torn up, because these Posca nibs, because they're handling paint instead of ink, they're a little bit more coarse. And what that means is they kind of scrub up the fibres of the paper, and that manifests itself as pilling, which is, yeah, just little bits that start appearing on your artwork. I don't get any of that because I'm using this particular sketchbook. It's called an Art Gecko Freestyle sketchbook. There's a Doodle with Korp special version of it as well. You need to go to the Art Gecko website to go and get that. But yeah, Art Gecko Freestyle. It's made for Posca pens, so it's got a nice smooth finish to it. You don't get any of that pilling nonsense as well. So if you're serious about trying to get your pen work to look really smooth, it's definitely worth investing in. There we go, first line. So this is the last stripe, so just trying to squeeze it in here. I might have to go a little bit bigger with the skull just there. That's not quite wide enough for what we want to do. This side's alright there. That looks fine to me. Let's colour that in. Remember, pressing quite lightly. Remember to go and just prime your pen every now and then on a scrap sheet of cardboard. The frequency at which you prime your pen, where you just push the nib into the barrel, is kind of the frequency of which you'd, if you were painting, how often would you put the paintbrush in the paint to get new fresh paint? You kind of want to be doing it like that. If your nib's dry, if you wait until your nib's dry, you've left it too long. So just keep priming. And you want a constantly wet nib. Not too wet though, because you don't want it dripping everywhere. It will get a bit messy if you have it too wet. Unless that's your thing. That might be your thing. I don't know. Okay. Now, one thing I did, so I said about the skull, so we can tweak things on the fly. Now, that's a good gap. That's a good gap. That's a good gap. This is way too small. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to extend this part of the skull. I'm going to use a 3M. Extend that part. Bring it down to about there. Colour that in. So it's a little bit wider. That's about wide enough now. The only issue there would be if we were going off the page, in which case I'd have to fudge it in a different way. Okay, let's give that a few seconds to dry now. We've got the colours in. Few seconds to dry, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go in with the deep grey. This deep grey is where the magic really happens. It's where we turn these skulls into something that looks a little bit more 3D. So here we go. Let's go with let's do this one at the top first, because this one's still a little bit wet over on this side. So this one at the top first. What we're going to do is we're going to draw, you see that curve that we've got there, we're going to draw that curve, but when we get to the top, just there, when we get to the right hand side at the top, we're going to curve upwards and go behind the rainbow. Same with here, we're going to go upwards and behind the rainbow. Okay, so let's do this bottom line first. All the way to the edge like that. And then, like I say, what we're going to do is just go upwards and behind the rainbow. Colour that in. See already, even though it looks a little bit rough around the edges there, already it looks a little bit more 3D, like the rainbow is coming from inside the skull, rather than over here where it just looks like the rainbow is behind a mask. This is making everything look a lot more 3D. So let's do the same on this side, look, just up there. Kind of going into that lilac a little bit, same as I did over there, going into that red a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that because we can put the red back on top later. But going into that lilac a little bit and colouring that bit in. This bit down here, let's just thicken that outlet as well. All the way across there. That looks alright to me. See how easy that was? No problem. Let's go and do the same for the other side now. We're dry over here. One line all the way across. First. Over on one side, just curl it up behind the rainbow. Colour that bit in. On the other side, curl it up behind the rainbow. Colour that edge in. Finish off with flicking a little line or thickening this line down here. Look at that. See what a difference that deep grey makes? Because the deep grey, this again, another thing I really like about Posca pens is you can find loads of really magic colour combos. So like this black and deep grey, they just look like light and dark versions of the same colour. So it's a great way of making things look a little bit more 3D. Right. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to take those colours again. And what Posca is known for is being able to put colours on top of colours and getting the new colour to come through. Something you can't do with many other felt tips. So we're going to take those colours again, and what we're going to do is just add loads of drips and stuff to these rainbow bits. So let me show you what I mean. It's easier for me to show you than actually talk about it. Let's get that out of the way. Okay, so two different kinds of drips that we're going to do. One drip is just a small drip and the other drip is a big drip. So this is what small drip looks like. Just looks like a little bit of a gathering of liquid just there. It's about to turn into a big drip. Let's do another small drip. Like that. Then maybe underneath. This is how a bigger drip will look like. See how it just comes right out of the page. Right out of the rainbow there. So what we're going to do, starting at the top, work your way down, start at the top, work your way down on the other side as well. Just add those drips in. Now try and keep it as random as possible. You don't want any kind of uniformity. As soon as stuff starts looking symmetrical or patterned, it starts to look a bit weird. So I've done like two drips there, big drip, and then left a gap and done another small drip there. On the other side, what I'll do, let's just put a big drip in here. And maybe just a small drip there. And I'll leave it like that. That's good for the time being. The other thing to do before we put this red away is around some of these drips, let's put little kind of loose bits of splatter as well. So when I say that, I just mean like little dots. Like that. See how a lot of them are done in pairs? So we've got a pair there, pair there, pair there. Pairs and threes are good ways of making things look a bit more random. Clumping them together and doing them in twos and threes works really well. Okay, grab your next colour along. Next colour is orange. Now we're going to do the same again with this orange, but we're going to go into the red this time and start taking some drips out. So again, try and keep it different to what you've already done. So let's put a big drip in there. Let's put some smaller drips. Let's put a big drip down the bottom here as well. Can you see that? You can just about see that coming through. It's going to do something over this side. I'm just going to put 2 small drips over this side. So again, keeping it nice and random. We'll do most of the drips and then we'll take a little scan of our artwork after we've done all the drips and see where there's any plain bits that are looking a bit lame, and then we'll add some extra drips in there. In the meantime, let's go and add some of these spots. Now remember, I was doing them in 2s and 3s. 1, 2, 3 there, 2 there, and then just throw in maybe 1 or 2 singles. Now yellow's a bit of a tricky colour to work with, it does come through quite transparent, so you might sometimes need to, when you're using a yellow to go over another colour, you might sometimes need to give it 2 coats. But let's see how this one looks. So what we've got at the top, let's put a small drip in. That's gone on quite opaque, that's nice. Let's go down here, let's put a big drip. Let's put 2, we've not done 2 big drips together, let's do that. Yeah, looking good. Small drip right down the bottom there. Now if it doesn't go on opaque enough, if it's looking a bit thin, don't panic. Don't try and keep colouring in the same area, it won't work. You'll just keep spreading around the same thin paint. Let it dry. Look at it as a base coat or an undercoat. Let it dry. When it's dry, give it another coat afterwards, and that will make it double the opacity. Let's go and put one in that side, so like a medium sized drip, some small drips just there. And again, we will kind of put another double coat on these if we need to. Stick in some splatter in various places, then go and work on your next colour. Next one is green. Now green is kind of the central point. Green and yellow are the central point, but I'm going to use green as the central point. So we're going to do drips on both sides this time. And then we're going to flip where the drips are. Because you notice around the top there, I did all the drips on the outside of the colour. So on this one, we're going to do some drips on the outside, but also some drips on the inside. Can you see that? It's very difficult to see that on the blue, but it is there. Let's do something similar on the other side. So let's put some small ones in. Big one. Just keeping it as random as possible. Splatter. 2s and 3s. And then just a couple of little singles. Don't forget you're doing splatter on the blue as well in this one. Keep on working your way through the colours. Let's go to light blue next. This time don't forget we're going on the inside, so like that you can see those colours coming through really sharp. Really obvious those ones. Let's put another little drip in there, a little tiny one. Around the other side, just 2 little tiny drips. I haven't got much space to work with there, so I'm just going to leave it to 2 little tiny drips. Splatter, 2s and 3s. A couple of singles. Last colour. Back in with the lilac. Let's go and throw in some drippage. Big drips, small drips. Sometimes dodgy drips. That's better. That looks alright. A little bit of splatter. And a couple of singles on their own if you need to. Wherever you think. Okay, once you're at that stage, just give your artwork a little scan, see if there's any areas that you think look a little bit boring. So across here it looks a little bit boring to me, so I'm just going to go in with those colours, add a few more bits and bobs in there. So definitely I'm going to put some little blue bits of splatter in here because we've not got much going on with the blue. Well, nothing going on inside the green, which is bothering me a bit. Let's put a little droplet up there. Oops. Bit of orange. Bit of yellow. So you see, just kind of filling in those gaps. Actually, while we've got that yellow, let's go and give those a second coat. Now, when you're giving those second coats, try not to scrub over it too much. If you, when you colour it in, you just want to give it again another little delicate little coat. If you scrub over it, if you go over it too much, what's going to happen is you're going to start diluting. You're going to start, just taking off the paint that's already laid down, because it's not set. It's still quite soft because we're only just finished colouring in. It's going to take it away if we're not careful. Awesome, that's looking great. I'm really liking how that's looking. Now, one of the things we can do here, actually what we'll do first is we'll just tidy up a little bit. So just going back in with those deep greys. See what these little bits here and here that just look a little bit messy. Not deep grey, red. Just there, let's just make that line disappear. Gone. Same over this side. Make that deep grey line disappear like that. We need to do the same with the lilac on the inside. Just there and just there. Just again, bringing that rainbow. So we've got the deep grey line that's going behind, but bringing that rainbow colour back to the front so it looks like it sits in front of the deep grey. Awesome. Now, a nice little trick we can do with this now is to have those rainbow colours coming out into the eyes of the skull. So let's have a little go at that. Now, as we do this, we're going to go over the edges of the black. It's going to look a little bit messy, but then we'll bring the black back later to bring that to the front. Okay, so don't worry if it's looking a bit messy. The main thing to concentrate on is we've got a bit of red coming down there. So let's go and put a bit of red in there. A bit of red comes down there. Chuck a bit of red in there. Like I say, it's going to look a bit messy around the edges where we're going over the black. Don't panic about it. We can sort that out later. Let's go into the orange. Now, instead of doing this, you could also have these colours kind of going behind the eyes and coming out the mouth as well. There's all sorts you can do with this. So experiment with it. Have a bit of fun with it. Try and do something that nobody else has thought of if you can. Yeah, and look at that. That's looking really messy up the top there. Sometimes with Posca pens, I find you've got to make a bit of a mess, knowing that you're going to tidy it up later. Having the confidence to know you're going to come back and you're going to tidy it up. Doesn't have to look great. I always say, don't judge your artwork until it's finished. Halfway through, everybody's artwork looks rubbish. So don't stop until it's finished. Then you can judge it. Then it can still be rubbish. Hopefully not. But yeah, always wait. Always wait till you're finished. Because 9 times out of 10 it looks a lot better when you finished it. Look at this. These eyes look a bit of a mess now, yeah? That's fine. Just work with it. We're just going through the same process as what we did before. Putting the rainbow colours on, then putting some little drips and splatter in there. We'll come and do that in a second. Oops, let's do this bit. Last colour. A little bit of lilac. Cross there. Around the edge. Rough as you like. I don't care. Awesome. So what we're going to do, we're just going to wait, give that a few seconds again to dry. Always just be patient enough with your Posca pens to let them dry before you start putting other colours over the top. Sometimes they'll dry and they'll look dry, but they'll still be quite soft. So the longer you can give it, the better. If you can't give it long and you're getting a bit impatient, just make sure you have a nice light touch on it. If you scrape too hard, you might start peeling up some of that softer paint with the wet paint underneath it. So yeah, just be really careful when you're doing that. Okay, I think these are pretty much mostly dry, so let's go and shape these eyes again. So you see how, look how rough that looks around the edge. What we can do now is just go around with the black, just tidy that all up, and we get those nice sharp edges again. Let's do the same on the other side. Like that, get some really nice shapes coming out. Again, you can see that I'm not really going circular with the eyes. I'm going quite square, quite squircular, I guess is the word, with the eyes. That looks better for me. Again, leave it to dry. Whilst we're waiting for that to dry, we're just going to nip inside some of these areas and put some extra little dots and splatter in. Just things like that. There we go, so a bit of orange in there, a bit of yellow. Let's bring a drip and a dot out there. This one's got lots of space, so we can bring a big drip and a couple of dots. 3 dots. Moving over to the green, let's whip over here. That's got a big space, so we can put a big green splatter bit in there. So you see what we're doing is we're just taking that consistency of what we've got up here and bringing it down into the eyes as well. Whilst we're in there with those colours, and now these eyes, the black part of the eyes is really dry, we can then add some extra drips. So check out these extra drips. What we'll do is we'll pick one of the colours. I'm going to go with the orange over here first, and watch this. What we can do is just have that orange, so it's just dripping out into the skull there. Maybe over here it's got a bigger drip. Like that. Let's put some extra little bits coming out. Again, you might need to give that a second coat, let it dry, come back to it. I'm going to do the same with the blue. I like the way the blue's coming out here, so let's have some blue kind of dripping down this way. Just coming out of there. Little spots coming down. Let's put another bit of blue in there actually. A little tiny bit there. Same on the other side, look. Just a little tiny bit of blue. Maybe I've got a bit more space for some green on this side, look. See how cool that looks with those extra colours spilling out. This one over here is looking a bit boring because we've only got one bit of drippage. Let's go and put in maybe a little bit of red. Experiment with it. See what works for you. Lovely. Let's have a little bit of yellow just dropping down there. And like I say, if you need to, when they're dry, give them a second coat. This orange isn't looking particularly opaque. Let's put a little bit more on there. Always just make sure it's dry before you give it another coat. Okay, last thing to do on this piece. Now I'm going to use a 3M, a black 3M for this last section. So we've got all these like liquids, rainbow coloured liquids all over the place. Let's go and do the same kind of thing with the skull. Now this is where it looks really interesting. What we'll do is we'll take a dry section, put your hand in a dry section, and then we're going to add some drips like this. So from the black into the colour. Now the anatomy of a drip is kind of stretched and thin down the bottom here, getting a little bit fatter around the top and round at the top, just so it looks like it's stretching, like there's a bit of movement in there. Let's put some of those smaller drips coming off the top as well. We're going to scatter a few of those across there, so let's put a smaller one in over here. Just a smaller one, just a small drip. Maybe even a little tiny one here, just the beginnings of a little drip, nothing too much in there. What about over here? Let's put another one in. Anywhere you want, just throw in a few drips. Look how cool that looks with those drips in there. I think we need one over this side. Little tiny one to balance it out. Now, did just feel a bit wet under my hand there, so that's a bit risky. Okay, let's do the same on the other side. Let's bring in these drips. See how they're just curving out from underneath here. Big and round at the top, like a snooker ball in a sock. Pressing nice and gently, nothing too hard while you're doing this. Let's do another drip here, look, quite a big one there as well. One in here. And we've done 3 fairly big ones in a row there, so maybe we should go for a small one. Just there. Lovely. Have a little scan of it. What's working, what's not working. That looks alright to me. I'm going to finish off a couple of little black spots around here. I like these little black spots as little bits of filler. Again, doing like 2s and 3s. Adds a little bit of contrast to your piece. How's that looking? Do we need a few? Let's put a few little bits in here, look. And maybe just there. Awesome stuff. I really like that. So there you go. There's my top tip on how to use these Posca pens with the ability to have the colours laying over the top. So we did most of all our colouring in. It looked pretty boring at the halfway stage, and then we just added all these bits. We just built up the layers by putting colours on top of other colours, and look how neat it looks. So try this out yourself. Different shaped skulls, different colours in the liquids, all sorts of different things, different canvases as well. Maybe you can draw it on a bit of cardboard and see what that looks like. But yeah, try it out yourself. If you do and you post it online, use the hashtag doodlewithkorp so I can find it. Just going to quickly put a signature on mine, DMK. There we go. All done. Right. Hope you enjoyed that session. Thank you very much for taking part. Don't forget to hashtag it if you post it online. And yeah, cheers everyone. I'll see you in the next video.